Do you see me? Yes.
I can see you perfectly fine, sir. How are you?
Fine. Nice to see you.
Good, good, good. I love your background there. That's perfect.
Oh, well, just I should say I'm being modest. I'm not being modest, but that's the cover of my book coming out in May.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Well, I wanted to talk about that as well as a few other things. If you have just a few minutes today, I know you probably pretty busy schedule with all this recovery going underway.
You're the highlight of my day.
Well, thank you very much for that. So I guess first question would be, I understand that, if I understand this correctly, this is your brainchild. That being the case, where did this idea originate?
When Obama was leaving office, he told the National Park Service director he wanted more diversity in terms of national parks and World Heritage sites. So I got to know the director during the run up to the Selma 50th anniversary.
Okay.
Because he came to town a number of times. And so I was sort of familiar with discussion of UNESCO sites because I'm an ex officio member of the Alabama Historical Commission. So I was aware that in 2006 or 7, the National Park Service did some research and they came up with about a half a dozen different topics for UNESCO sites, like Frank Lloyd Wright sites, civil rights sites, and some others. And so our office just took that on as a project. And because where I sit, I am one block from Martin Luther King's church.
Oh my gosh.
And when I look out the cafeteria window, I'm looking at the back of the church, and it's almost like a beacon that says, "What have you done for me today? You know, what are you doing?" And not that the people are, I mean, the people are lovely, but I know it's an opportunity for us because, I mean, that building, like I said, oh, excuse me one second, I'll show you. We even did some little souvenirs of the church.
Nice.
That we give to their gift shop to sell. So,
Okay.
So that.
So this would have been around 2012, 2013, where the idea was hatched. Was this specific to Alabama, or did you have a vision of sort of a grander trail in mind?
Good question. Because I mentioned there's the Edmund Pettus Bridge and 2 churches, one in Birmingham, others that we would work on nominating. And Mr. Jarvis said, "Oh no, it has to be the best in the country." And I said, "Damn." But our office has been paying for everything because civil rights is a much bigger topic in Alabama than it is, say, in North Carolina or Louisiana. And so I just thought it would be much easier for us to budget for the whole thing rather than me spending a year going to different states saying, "I need $100,000 from you for something that may not ever happen and you may not benefit from it." So I thought, let's just do the whole thing. So we contracted with Georgia State University. Now, all of this I'm telling you, I have written down. That's in the sort of the back of this book.
Oh, okay.
That I'll be glad to email to you. The book's not printed; it'll be printed as the ad agency said, pencils down by Monday. So I'm through. But so Georgia State University did research and found that about 60 structures around the country could meet the minimum qualifications to be considered for World Heritage status. And so I realized nobody had ever done an inventory of civil rights landmarks. And so we had something of value.
Isn't that amazing that had never been done before?
Because, well, I'm not terribly surprised when you think about it, because the people who were most concerned about this had the fewest resources. Because, I mean, I'm old enough. I heard Martin Luther King speak during the Selma March, and I probably 35% of the people in the country were supportive of them, and the others weren't. So, but I took that list. There are 12 states in Travel South. And I said, while Georgia State University is working on the UNESCO side, let's create, I want you to look at museums and churches in your state where motor coach groups are already coming, not just because something happened there. Martin Luther King's made 2,500 speeches. And so just because he spoke somewhere, that's not going to get you on our list. Okay. So like I said, we started out with about 60 sites, and we came up with another 50 from some states had 2 and some states had 8. And so we were doing the research in 2007. And is that right? No, 17, sorry.
17, okay.
I've been working on this a long time. And so we launched it. Our office paid our ad agency to create a spectacular website. And when the ad agency said, "What's the budget for this?" I said, whatever it costs. We're doing this one time, and we're going to do it right. And so, so then we sort of rolled it out in 2018, and the media has just been incredibly supportive.
Well, I agree with you on the website for sure. That's was my indoctrination to this, and it's extremely classy, easy to get around, find various sites. So yeah, they definitely hit the nail on the head with that.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that. I've looked at it so long, I can't be.
I'm not objective anymore, are you?
It's like, okay, anything we could think of, we put in, and we tracked people down, particularly to get interviews. And some of these people, like they passed, say, maybe 2 months later. So all of this was sort of just in time. But the idea being, we want to let people know that these landmarks that they've seen in history books many of them are still there. Because for better or worse, most of the places where the events took place were in either poorer parts of town, and those places have not been bulldozed. They were just sort of still there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's because in so many areas, I'm sure if you've seen in around Alabama, when development comes through, unless there's a historical marker that's already there or a really passionate group behind it, usually what was there before gets leveled and recycled.
You just raised a good point that indirectly got me started on this. And have you ever heard of Space Camp for Kids?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's what I did in the 80s. I was marketing director at the Space and Rocket Center, got the first 100,000 kids to Space Camp, and did the movie Space Camp.
Okay.
It starred a 10-year-old kid who at the time his name was Lee Phoenix, but we know him now as Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh my goodness.
As a 10-year-old, it was his first film.
Did you know back then that he was going to make it?
Well, I took freeze-dried ice cream to LA for the first day of shooting to use as a gimmick to introduce myself to the cast. And when I offered it to him, he said, does this have real milk and eggs in it? And I thought, why, sure, I'm sure it does. Hell, I didn't know. It tasted like chalk. And I said, yes, it does. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't accept it. We're strict vegetarians. And I wanted to say, you're 10.
Yeah, yeah, boy, that was ingrained in him at an early age.
But really what got me started on this project, I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted to be state tourism director. And so I was traveling the state to do research. Now I'm from Huntsville, which is North Alabama.
Yep.
It's closer to Nashville than it is to Birmingham. And so when I came to Montgomery, I bought 2 books in the basement of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. One told where Rosa Parks got on the bus, and one where she got arrested. The Montgomery Chamber of Commerce in 1992 had nothing on civil rights in this town. And so for some reason, a white guy who was the PR guy for the Black congressman in Birmingham called me that day. He used to sell me golf advertising. I don't remember why he called, but he called and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm in Montgomery researching for a travel book. What are you going to do with the money from your book? I said, I'm going to put up a marker where Rosa Parks got arrested. And he said, you mean there's not one? I said, there is not a single civil rights marker in this city. Remember now, this is where the Confederacy started. Yeah. And so he called the next day and said, I got the money for your marker. I guess they called the Chamber of Commerce or somebody. And so 6 months later, there was a marker there, and which the local people wrote. And I heard later, now that marker was put in front of the Empire Theater, which had been closed for a number of years. That was the bus stop at the Empire Theater where Rosa Parks got arrested, because when she got on the bus, she was legal of where she sat. Mm. But then coming out of the movie theater, there were a bunch of people at 5 o'clock getting on the bus. So technically she was supposed to leave because the boundaries move depending on where the white people are. And so the bus driver said, I mean, she got on Dexter Avenue, which is the main street. And then 2 blocks later, the bus driver said, you're going to have to move. And she had just been to a workshop in Tennessee, and the discussion a lot about it was Emmett Till, because Emmett Till died in August or September, and this was the first day of December.
Okay, same year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a few months. And the thought of him went through her mind, and she thought, this has got to end. So when the bus driver said, well, if you don't move, I'm going to have you arrested. And she said, you may do that. And that's what started it all.
Got it all going, yeah. God bless her. Well, it's wonderful that you were instrumental in getting this rolling on a local level. Having been to Montgomery before and having seen some of this, it certainly helps tell the story, because history books only go so far. And the fact that you brought all this to life by stringing this trail together, it sounds like your life's work. This is something that you've been passionate about for a number of years, but it's all culminating at this point in time.
Well, I'm happy to say, and people are shocked to hear this, but when George Wallace was elected for the last time in 1982, by this time blacks could vote. And so he courted the blacks, and they voted for him. Blacks love it when somebody comes and apologizes. White people are not nearly as forgiving as black people. But a guy who shortly after that became a lifelong friend. He was the number 2 guy in Birmingham CVB, and he got himself appointed as George Wallace's tourism director. and he went to Wallace and said, we need to honor Blacks who voted for you. And so Wallace agreed to let them develop a Black History Guide, which was updated for the next 20 years.
Okay.
And it was mainly where, stuff happened. But when I got here, I'm much more of a tourism person. I said, this book is filled with interesting facts, but I used the example of my hometown of Decatur. Well, it's where the Scottsboro Boys trial took place. But that courthouse has been torn down. There's not a historic marker. I said, so if anybody who followed this book and came to Decatur to see the story of the Scottsboro Boys, who's not going to be there. So I just lifted everything out of that book that was about civil rights, and that's open to the public now.
Okay.
So when I was discussing this later with my counterparts across the South, talking about adding more sites, I said, I don't care if it's a church and Martin Luther King spoke there, but if that group is not now hosting motor coach groups, then I'm not going to be for them getting added to this list.
Okay. What's the total number of attractions, markers along the trail currently?
Right at 125.
Okay. And that stretches across 12 states still, or has that changed?
It's a little beyond that now. There is a school in Delaware that was one of the 5 schools or 5 court cases that was rolled up into Brown versus Board of Education, which is the Supreme Court decision that ended legal segregation. And so that's in Delaware. So that's the furthest east. And Topeka, Kansas is the furthest to the west. Now that Topeka, Kansas, that was the namesake of the lawsuit that was Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. So
okay.
that's the range. So yeah, that was a discussion that we had early on, saying we are a strong organization of 12 states. And after the University of Missouri joined the SEC for football, Missouri wanted to be in it. So they're not one of our 12, but for a maintenance fee, states that have major civil rights attractions, we're happy for them to join, and that's mainly to keep the website up to date.
Sure. Where would the largest concentration or state or city of civil rights attractions and markers be found?
Alabama.
Is it Alabama? Okay. Yeah, that's what I assume, but you don't want to assume anything these days. So that you're really the heart and soul of it.
Right. As a good example of that, the New York Times and National Geographic, their travel divisions are bringing groups here in October for the first time. And I mean, I don't make a big deal about this to my counterparts, but they are spending 6 days in Alabama. But a good example of a broader version, Trafalgar Travel, which is big in Europe, they have an 8 or 9 day trip that starts in Memphis and then goes to Mississippi, through Alabama, and then flying out of Atlanta. So I think that's sort of the range of not only what we're seeing now, but the direction that these are going on.
The nice thing about that is, since Trafalgar is such a popular brand name, having been in the tour business for so many years, there's a copycat mentality that happens. We used to get back before I started publishing, when we were a tour operator, we got some of our best ideas from our competitors. So if that Trafalgar trip gets some steam behind it, you're going to see other operators start to really catch on to that. And I certainly applaud you on the group aspect of it, because I think that's an important asset to have, is to be able to have the facilities and the function space and the setting that groups thrive in, whether they're seniors. I would imagine student groups, this would really, my kids in grade school are learning about this. And what an excellent way to apply what you're learning in school to what really happened and see the sites.
I think that, well, I know that this is very educational because until COVID, Montgomery, 5 years ago, Montgomery didn't have a whole lot of group travel, school kids in particular, seeing civil rights sites. They would come to Montgomery, they would tour the Capitol, go through the archives building, but now civil rights is something that they are all prepared for. But if we had started all this 5 years ago, I think they would, not just locally, but internationally, there would have been sort of a ho-hum about it. But we just happened to be going live with this right about the right time.
Yep, striking at the right time. The other market that I immediately thought of is the family reunion sector. We've got an active segment at Premier of family reunions, and so many African American family reunions will switch between north destinations and south destinations, is to be able to add that history and that culture to it, especially as they're passing down from generation to generation. That's what the essence of the reunion. I could see this being a huge driver going forward for that market segment.
You're absolutely right. Again, because I'm from North Alabama, where there wasn't much discussion about Black heritage. Again, because I was in Huntsville, which is, the Rocket City. But that's something that I've certainly learned in Selma and Montgomery. Portions of the movie Selma were filmed in Selma. The studio stuff was all in Atlanta. And they would have, and it was right at the end of June,